I am delighted to bring you news today that the BC Court of Appeal, in a unanimous decision by 5 Court of Appeal judges, have upheld the rights of the Trinity Western University, a Christian-themed university, a university that has secular studies but taught in a Christian milieu, has had its rights upheld to have a law school. Now, this seems obvious. Everyone in Canada has the same rights, but activists, extremist activists, have tried to ban this law school from opening. They couldn't stop the law school from getting accredited, so they went to different law societies across Canada, getting the benchers, that is the senior lawyers that run these law societies, to ban students who would graduate in the future from a law school, Trinity Western. Just to be clear, there is no law school there yet. There have been no graduates yet. And none of those prospective graduates have done anything wrong yet because they don't exist. Yet 3 law societies in Canada, in British Columbia, in Ontario, and Nova Scotia, preemptively decided to be anti-Christian bigots and to ban prospective lawyers from the school. Well, great news today. In British Columbia, the Court of Appeal was unanimous in support of the university's right. And joining us now live via Skype from Calgary is our friend John Carpe with the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms, a group that was intervening on behalf of freedom of religion and freedom of association. John, congratulations. I'm so glad to hear this. I was nervous about this one. A unanimous ruling by 5 judges. You got to feel pretty good about that.
It's fantastic news. It's good news for the Free Society. It's good news for all Canadians who want to continue to enjoy the freedom to create groups of their own choosing and run their own organizations. And it's a good slap in the face to this horrible notion that we can just go through life without encountering opinions or organizations that we disagree with. It's a big victory for the Free Society. Yeah, well, you've been fighting this since day one. You've been intervening in court all across the country in all these 3 provinces I mentioned. You know what gets me, John, is that the benchers, that's the name of these senior lawyers who basically run the profession. The benchers in BC, Ontario, and Nova Scotia, they didn't hide their motivations. They didn't say, oh, this school might not teach law well. Oh, they're not accredited. They didn't try that. They all acknowledge that the Trinity Western University is a first-rate university that teaches things just fine. They did not hide that they were motivated by raw anti-Christian bigotry. Some of these benchers are positively anti-Christian bigots, and they thought they could get away with this. Especially in BC, it was so active there. They had a big lawyers meeting. They invited hundreds of lawyers to attend. 5 senior judges in BC slapped them down. I'm just still reeling from that. I was worried because BC likes to be very progressive, but they say, you know what, you can be as gay rights as you want to be, but the Christians get to be as Christian rights as they want to be. You can't ban them. That's basically what happened today, right? Well, one of the passages in the decision talks about how the Trinity Western's community covenant, which says no sex outside of the marriage of one man and one woman, the court says, we understand that is deeply offensive to some gay people, but bear in mind that when Trinity Western gets slammed and attacked as being hateful and bigoted and backwards and hypocritical and so on and so forth, that's offensive to Trinity Western University. And in a free society, we all have to to put it into very non-legal terms, we have to suck it up and just accept the fact that there's other people out there that fundamentally disagree, and we don't have a right to shut down their organizations or to censor their speech. So you know what? It cuts both ways. You can't say we're going to suppress freedom in the name of sparing hurt feelings, because then you don't have a free society if that's the approach you take.
You're so right. And the legal test, this is what's so encouraging here. The legal test, the judges say, can't be who's offended the most, because there is no counterfeit human right not to be offended. John, you were kind enough to email me some passages from the ruling. I'm going to read just a little bit. I find this so heartening, in that 5 senior judges in BC say this unanimously is so encouraging. Let me read just a little bit, and this part is in fairly plain language. It's not too much legalese. I'm quoting from paragraph 189 in the ruling today. I'm just going to read it. It says, "It was evident in the case before us that the language of offense and hurt is not helpful in balancing competing rights. The beliefs expressed by some benchers and members of the Law Society that the evangelical Christian community's view of marriage is abhorrent, archaic, and hypocritical would no doubt be deeply offensive and hurtful to members of that community." So they're basically saying, you're insulting Christians, and that you say they're insulting gays, and back and forth. Toughen up, everybody. Toughen up. You can't ban someone because they're offensive. Let me read just one more line. This is from the preceding paragraph, and then I'd love you to comment. John, this is so powerful and so refreshing to hear judges say, stop whining. Being personally offended is not something the Charter protects you from. Here, let me just read one more paragraph, and then I'll invite you to jump in, John. This is from paragraph 188. "The balancing of conflicting Charter rights requires a statutory decision maker to assess the degree of infringement of a decision on the Charter right." That basically means how badly are your rights hurt is important in court. And then get this. While there is no doubt that the Covenant's refusal to accept lesbian and gay expressions of sexuality is deeply offensive and hurtful to that community, we do not in any way wish to minimize that effect. Here's the key line. "There is no charter or other legal right to be free from views that offend and contradict an individual's strongly held beliefs." And then here's the last line. "Disagreement and discomfort with the views of others is unavoidable in a free and democratic society." There's a little bit of legalese in here, but let me put it in plain language and then over to you, John. The judges are saying, if you don't like Christians, if you don't like Christian views on things, you can't ban them from having a law school. You can't ban Christians from being lawyers. If you don't like what they have to say, that does not amount to a charter right to ban them. I can't believe this came from a court in 2016. It gives me hope for our whole legal system. John, over to you.
Well, it's very heartening. The court also said that a well-intentioned majority acting in the name of tolerance and liberalism can, if unchecked, impose its views on the minority in a manner that is in itself intolerant and illiberal. And so the court's recognizing that, you know, these benchers, I mean, in their own minds, they're acting with the best of intentions. They're trying to stamp out homophobia, and they're trying to be on this, you know, moral crusade to shut down institutions that are going to hold to traditional views on sexual morality. And so, but even if well intentioned, you cannot shut down the minority, and that's really good to hear, because it's something, I tell you, that when you look at how students behave on campus at universities today, this core foundations of the free society are not being taught in elementary school or high school. Yeah. So it's really refreshing to see the court speak up for freedom here in this case.
You're so right. You know, after our discussion, John, we're going to Jordan Peterson, the University of Toronto professor, who is being hounded out of the university because he says trigger words. He's not willing to say, you know, people say, you must call me, they say you can't say his or her or you or your, you have to use the gender pronouns. It's just so confusing. It doesn't even make sense. It's not even English. He's being told to call transgender people je or jur or made up words. It's so insane. And this court is saying, you know what? You can't force people to do your goofy stuff, just like they can't force you to do their goofy stuff. We all get to have our eccentricities and our ideological and religious choices. So refreshing. John, I want to end this way. I want to end with a personal thank you. I love what you're doing. You're one of the few people in Canada who fights for religious freedom, freedom of speech. You're very strong on freedom of speech. Our viewers have put together, I have in my hand here a check for you for $5,100 from our Rebel viewers. We're going to mail this to you today because I know you've spent a lot of time and money just going to these different courts. You're based in Calgary, but you went out to BC, to the trial and the appeal there. Were you there at the trial or just the appeal, or both?
Both.
Both. And the same thing in Ontario, and the same thing in Nova Scotia. Just your airfare alone, you guys fighting for freedom in 3 provinces. I've flown around Canada. That's thousands of dollars. Plus you got a legal team. I got to imagine you guys spent tens of thousands of dollars as an intervener in court John, here's $5,100. It's going in the mail to you today. This is from our viewers. And folks, if you haven't chipped in yet, please consider doing so. Go to our website, therealbigots.com. We use that word because, as the BC Court of Appeal says, the real bigots here were the law societies. The anti-Christian bigots, they were therealbigots.com. If you haven't chipped in yet to John Carpe, please go to the website, and you can do so now. It's not just a moral thank you to John, it's helping to cover, but just the airfare alone. Last word to you, John. Do you think the benchers, those anti-Christian bigots who lost today in BC, do you think they'll take a lesson from the BC Court of Appeal and say, all right, we were wrong? Or do you think they're going to appeal all the way to the Supreme Court of Canada?
I have not a clue, but since you asked me, I'll throw out a prediction. I predict that the Law Society of British Columbia is going to appeal this. I think they're going to hope that the Supreme Court of Canada might side with the Ontario Court of Appeal, which very sadly ruled in the opposite direction. So my prediction is that they will appeal, but it'd be great if they didn't, and just accepted the results for freedom.
Yeah. Well, you know what lawyers do is they sue and they appeal and they litigate. So I think you're right. I think this is going on the way. Folks, if you haven't chipped into this $5,100, go to therealbigots.com. We'll send a check to John to help cover the tens of thousands of dollars he's spent so far. John, thanks for being one of the greatest freedom fighters in Canada, and congratulations to you on an important victory in BC.
Thanks for having me on your show, Ezra.
All right, take care. Thanks for watching. Click here to never miss a Rebel update. Want even more of the Rebel? Well, click here to become a premium member.